that can be treated, and there are injuries that cannot. As a nurse, I learned that when blood flow is cut off or severely restricted long enough, organs do not simply weaken, they begin to die. And once that damage spreads to multiple organ systems, there is no intervention that can reverse it. When Sam chose to leave for Doha, Qatar, for a job offer that would take him away for 6 months at a time under another man's direction, I felt it in my spirit immediately. That is why I begged him not to go. This wasn't distance, it was ischemia. And I knew it carried deadly potential. I could only pray that it wouldn't become what I feared. The beginning of catastrophic, multi-system organ failure in our marriage. So in the last episode, I told you that Sam and his parents' visit to Canada was the last time that we would be together in any kind of unity as a family. The reason for this is that once Sam's parents left and he was on his own, Don had access to insert himself into Sam's decisions again. And Sam received a job offer from a company in Doha, Qatar. When he told me about it, he said it meant a lot of money, and it meant that he would be gone for 6 months at a time, which meant that he would not be with us for 6 months at a time. This was unthinkable to me. It's ironic, Don had routinely tried to convince Sam that I just wanted him for his wealth. And yet, for our entire marriage, I wished that Sam didn't value money so highly, and that he wasn't so well off. I knew that Sam's childhood had primed him to believe that moving away from family under the banner of providing was simply what was done. But you see, I understood the relational cost that had formed in Sam because of it. And I also knew what threat that kind of distance posed to Sam's bond with Esther. And that's to say nothing of the fact that we were actively trying to repair a fractured marriage. But Dawn was encouraging Sam to take this job. And I felt they were both seeing dollar signs, and I was sickened by it. And I was angry. I pleaded with Sam, and I was clear. My spirit was warning me that this would be a catastrophic move. Once again, Sam sided with his preference, which was Dawn's direction. He tried to give me hope, I think, and make the choice feel acceptable by talking about purchasing a home in BC so that whenever he was home, we could be together in our own space. Without telling me, he had given Dawn his car, sold mine, and when I confronted him about that, he decided to make it right by purchasing me a vehicle that I could use for school instead of my parents' rundown van. Well, Sam came for a visit before he left for the Middle East, and we tried to focus on each other while he was there, tried to make the most of it, tried to behave like a family on the surface. But under the surface, there was no unity. Sam wanted me to consider going with him to the Middle East, and of course, bringing Esther. Believe it or not, I briefly considered it. However, Sam's broken promises had created a pattern that I simply could not ignore, and I had not forgotten what I believed God had made clear to me. I had to ensure Esther's safety. Going to a foreign country with a fractured and unstable marriage would have been the opposite of what I believed God was calling me to do. So I told Sam carefully that what he was asking me to do was impossible for me to give him. I was not happy about his choice, and he knew that. He was making a decision outside of our marriage yet again, and he was not certain about safety for himself over there, let alone for a biracial family. And I told him that under no circumstances would I feel comfortable taking that kind of risk with an innocent child involved. Besides that, I had decided that with the lack of stability that we had experienced over the years, I needed to stay the course and complete what I had started in my education. He wasn't happy, but he accepted my answer. Unhappy and frustrated as I was with his decision, I still tried to send him off with my love and care, letting him know I would be waiting for him to return. And he left with the intention to come home for a visit to North America in 6 months. And I worked hard to study during the interim, making headway on my prerequisite courses for the nursing program. It was an excellent distraction, and I was so thankful for my mother and my sister who helped with Esther's care so that I could spend what felt like endless hours studying in my room, ensuring that my grades were excellent. Unfortunately, we hit a snag very close to the deadline for the winter application for the nursing program. Esther became very ill with hand, foot, and mouth. It was an excruciating experience. She was so little, only 3 years old, and her mouth grew so swollen, the sores were everywhere. She couldn't speak, eat, or even drink water. The only thing I could give her that didn't make her cry out in agony was milk, and even that she couldn't drink, because moving her mouth was so painful for her. I had to feed her by syringe. Her fever was incredibly high, so I had to set everything else aside and hold her, putting milk into her mouth by syringe every few minutes just to keep her feeling fed. The worst of it lasted a week, and it unfortunately took me past my deadline. I was a mother first, so I accepted my fate. I would simply have to wait and apply to the program the next semester. Sam seemed to understand by phone when I told him how sick Esther was, but I knew he had no idea the intensity of those days for us. And so it was that the time came for Sam to come for a visit. This is probably the most difficult portion of my story to tell, because of the darkness that began to engulf my husband so that he was unrecognizable to me. After very challenging dialogue, trying to decide where we would meet for our reunion, we decided on San Diego. Sam's relatives would not be in town, but they were willing for us to use their home as a meeting point. Sam had wanted us to meet in Merced because that is what Don wanted, and according to Sam's argument, it was more practical. However, I told Sam that I was not comfortable with that plan. By now, Sam should have understood that I did not want Esther exposed to Don. I can't remember if I said it out loud, but that was the driving factor for me. And whether or not Sam would admit it, I believe he knew that. In fact, I had a very clear sense from God that remaining under blessing meant not giving in to coercion here. I felt very strongly that Esther's well-being depended on my keeping her out of that place and away from conflict. Sam accepted this, and we still even spoke of buying a home in Canada. I believe there was something related to Sam's green card as being the reason we had to meet in the US instead of in Canada, but I don't actually remember the specifics. But it doesn't matter now. What matters is what happened. I made my way down to San Diego with Esther and my mom by car. My mom came along so that I had help driving, and the plan was that once we arrived at our destination, my mom would fly home, leaving me down in California to meet up with Sam. The plan was for Sam to arrive in San Diego. I'm pretty sure we intended to drive back up to Canada together eventually. Again, I only remember what actually happened because of the trauma that occurred in the process. While we were making our way south by car, Sam was boarding a plane in the Middle East to make his way toward us. I'm not sure why he was behind us by a number of days. Something to do with the amount of time he could get off, I imagine. whenever it was. When he landed in North America, I got a call while I was in transit between Anaheim and San Diego. It went to voicemail, that much is clear. I think I simply missed the call. But that voicemail was a shock. It sounded like an entirely different person than my husband. As I listened, I went cold as death inside. There was not an ounce of warmth in that call. He was accusatory, harsh, and even derogatory. His tone actually sounded threatening in that call. He actually revoked all of his promises about reconciliation and about buying a home in Canada, and stated that if I didn't immediately agree to move back to Merced, then we were finished. Not only was I listening to more broken promises, but there was actual danger in his voice. Something terrifying had replaced the man I loved. And when I listened a second time, trying to hear through his accent, which was sharpened by a hostility I had never heard before, I heard only one coherent thought in my own head. I had to leave now. Fearing for my safety in every way, I took my baby and my mother and got back in the car and started to head for home. It's difficult to describe what it was that I actually felt. While there were no articulated physical threats towards me, I had a very bad sense that Sam was not in control of his emotions and not in control of his anger. And something had ignited him against me. I simply could not risk staying in San Diego, waiting for him to arrive, allowing my mother to go back to Canada, and remaining in a vulnerable position where he was that volatile. When I arrived in the safety of home, I emailed Sam. I told him that his voicemail had shown me there was no safety in meeting him, where I would be alone and vulnerable. I told him he was welcome to come anytime to be with Esther. He knew where we were, and he was also welcome to discuss with me what it was that had gone wrong, in a place where I felt safe and supported. Sam chose to spend 9 days in Merced with Dawn prior to coming to be with Esther and I. Then he came to BC and took a hotel. One of those days, we decided to discuss what happened. So I left Esther with my mother and my sister. Sam and I went to a coffee shop. This conversation was emotionally and psychologically devastating. Sam was unrestrained in the ways that he spoke to me. He demanded that I drop all my plans, move to Merced, and wait for him to finish his terms in Doha, or face divorce. I refused to capitulate, citing the fact that I was carrying on with my plan to go into nursing school. His response was this. He accused me of being lazy for missing my deadline to get into nursing school, and proceeded to tell me that I would never achieve this goal. He criticized my abilities as a mother. He threatened to take Esther from me and send her to live with his parents in India. He called me manipulative, he called me names, and the list goes on. He declared he would never marry again, that I had scarred him for life. He said, maybe one day if one of us comes to our senses we can get remarried, but he wanted a divorce. And this is where I end my summary of Sam's behavior until the final chapter of his role in my life. I left that conversation shaken in every way and yet full of resolve. I would become a nurse. I would protect my daughter, and I would pray for a miracle from God regarding my husband. His departure brought nothing but relief this time. Well, I completed my prerequisites in short order. I applied to the nursing program and I was accepted on my first application. I was joyful. Knowing that my situation was now permanent in Canada, I secured an apartment for Esther and I with support so that we would be close to my parents, but that I would maintain parental autonomy in my own home. I began nursing school with joyful anticipation. I stayed hidden in God. And while in my first month in nursing school, the divorce papers arrived. It was a very devastating blow, but it did not threaten my resolve to see my goals through. Well, if you've been following my story all the way through, thank you. Sharing this journey with you has been a very healing experience in surprising ways. And in the next chapter, I promise you will witness release from torment, and you will also bear witness to God's great love and tender leaning in. And I look forward to sharing with you what is so far the most pivotal and blessed moment of my life, after which a season of unrivaled joy takes the stage.